Hello there, everybody. And since I reviewed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Season 2, I'm now doing Season 3. So there are a bunch of episodes from Season 3. Ever since the first two seasons, which had pretty solid episodes, it went all out in Season 3. I'm going to guess this show was airing daily. If you are an older Ninja Turtle fan, comment below how was your experience watching the 80s show. Like, was it on daily? Was it on just a weekend? How did it go for you? But this show got a lot more fun after the first two seasons. There's a lot more characters this season, a lot of wackier stories, and it's all very cheesy, very fun stuff. So we might as well get started. So I'm not going to review every episode on this video. I'm just going to be reviewing the first 12 episodes since there's 47 episodes. But I don't know if I'm going in chronological order. I'm kind of just going on the IMDb order. So that's my little disclaimer. I'm going to put Season 3 into parts. Like Part 1, Part 2. So far, this video is Part 1. So let's get started. So the first episode is Beneath the Streets. So this is where the Turtles are getting a little too tired of constantly fighting Shredder, Krang, Bebop, and Rocksteady, and they feel they just need a break. But Splinter does not tolerate this at all and tells them that they have to do some training. But the Turtles decide to flee training and just go have some fun. And this is where they go to the movie theater and watch a movie for a while. And they're hesitant at first to watch the movie instead of going out crime fighting. But the Turtles decide that the city just needs a little break from them. But, of course, things get worse as the Shredder has returned. And he is going after the Turtles and Splinter. But because Shredder's causing some chaos, Splinter decides to go team up with April to go after Shredder. But during a battle between the two, Splinter gets hit by some ray that Shredder's been trying to steal from some hospital. And the Turtles, during this, they decide to leave the theater. But once they get a call from April, they decide they must find a cure for Splinter. And this episode is actually pretty good. It shows that the Turtles have to learn that their evil never sleeps, and they should never take a day off because the city needs the Ninja Turtles. But sorry if I don't remember everything, but I think they do eventually find a ray to cure Splinter. I knew Splinter was going to be fine, but it raises the stakes for Splinter's character. But that episode was definitely really good. The next episode is Turtles on Trial. So this is where the Turtles are going to be on some TV show where the guy there is a little shady. He apparently does a show where he exposes crimes, but he kind of just lies about it for money. So it kind of resembles today's movie critics, not like the good ones, but the grifters online, the ones I call out online. But it kind of reminds me of those kinds of people. But the Turtles are asked to be interviewed on the show, but of course the Turtles are afraid to go on live TV, so they decide to not go on the show, but instead get interviewed by April in the sewer. But the dude, I forget his name, but he does not like this at all. But even after when Shredder does show up to cause some more chaos per usual, I forget what happens, but I think it's more of a like Shredder Krang episode. But even after the Turtles defeat Krang and Shredder in this episode, the dude says he's still not going to tell the truth about the Turtles and just continue lying. But Mikey even calls him an airhead, which was funny. But I also forgot to mention in this episode, this is where the Turtles get a new disguise. And I'm not really a fan of this disguise. It's where they wear human mask. And the bald mask that they wear, they just look super creepy. It just, they just look weird in those masks. I just prefer the trench coats and hats. But Turtles on Trial was definitely an interesting episode for sure. But the next episode is definitely a weirder episode, is the attack of the 50-foot Irma. So this is where Irma gets hit by a ray that Shredder is using, and he's going to use it on the Turtles, but instead it hits Irma on her birthday, and she turns gigantic. And it basically kind of just becomes a King Kong parody, and you actually feel really bad for Irma. She kind of acts like a child in this episode, honestly, because, I don't know, she just whines and cries in this, but you can't blame her since, she was turned gigantic, and even when she at first doesn't experience anything until later when Vernon, April's colleague, makes fun of Irma's feet for being too big. But that's where Irma starts to grow, and she turns gigantic, and then the military goes after Irma, and it's up to the Turtles to find a way to cure Irma's giganticness, and they even hide her in a barn, I'm pretty sure, and of course, because she's too big, only her feet are sticking out, but the only way they can cure her is through a giant pill that Donnie created, and the Turtles tried to make her swallow it, but she just is like, no, I only eat pills of ice cream. But this is where Mikey comes up with the idea of using like a giant truck for her to swallow all that, and she even picks it up like a toy. But of course, Vernon is trying to get the big scoop story to take place of April's job, but of course April isn't liking it. But when April does show up, Irma has turned back, and she's able to finally celebrate her birthday, and that's the episode. But that episode was definitely an interesting one. It was nice to get some spotlight for Irma, but yeah, that's all I remember from this episode. The next episode is more of a gangster episode, the Matchy Hamster. So this is where I don't know if it's a parody of The Godfather. This is where Donnie has like a gangster accent in this whole episode. It's just like he randomly switches from his normal Donnie voice to this gangster voice. This is where they go up against some gangsters who are causing some waves of crime, and they're trying to use some device to commit various crimes, and it's actually revealed the perpetrator behind this weapon is, of course, Shredder. But the Turtles get captured, except for Donnie, who teams up with April to go find his brothers. But it's even funnier at the end of the episode where Raph tells Donnie to just quit it with the accent, and I thought that was funny. But this episode was definitely, I don't know, just like a parody of like gangster movies. But I do like the gangsters they fight's voices. It sounds so like perfect for this show. But if they're not fighting Shredder in this show, they're fighting like greedy businessmen. But this episode was definitely a fun one for sure. The next episode is Sky Turtles. So, Sky Turtles, I actually really like this episode. This is where Shredder and Krang are using some device that causes everything to float in the air, like a balloon, sort of. I don't know, that's a weird way to compare it, but once the Turtles start noticing that they're floating at the sky in the sewer, they decide to go investigate. But Shredder and Krang end up having these boot things that they give to the foot soldiers and Bebop and Rocksteady, and the turtles end up using the turtle van at first until it gets flipped over, and then Bebop and Rocksteady show up. And for some reason in this scene, I don't know if it's an animation error, Bebop randomly disappears in the scene, but they managed to take out Rocksteady, and Mikey puts on the boots, the sky boots, and he ends up taking out the foot soldiers, giving the boots to the other turtles, and of course they're able to get out, and then Bebop randomly shows back up in the turtle van, where the turtles end up taking the turtle blimp to help navigate what's going on, but everything starts floating up in the air, and like the Channel 6 building and everything. And this episode was definitely a fun one for sure. I think they definitely do stop Shredder and Krang in their weird plot. But Sky Turtles is definitely a highlight episode of this season for sure. The next episode, I think this is easily probably one of the better episodes, the Old Switcheroo. So this is where during a battle with Shredder, Splinter and Shredder end up swapping minds. It's a Freaky Friday episode. It's like they're using some device that Shredder's trying to use, but Splinter decides to tag along after Leo gets a little injured during training, and Shredder and Splinter end up swapping minds. They first don't realize it until later in the episode, and Splinter, it was funnier to see Splinter have to pretend to be Shredder, like he tries to insult Bebop and Rocksteady, because Shredder's known for insulting them all the time, calling them idiots. But this is where we see Shredder and Splinter's body, where Shredder starts acting super harsh towards the turtles, like making them do unnecessary chores, extreme training, and the turtles in April start to notice this, and then they decide to just leave the sewer until Splinter finds a way to get back to the turtles, and he basically explains in a polite way of how they swap bodies, and he's able to convince the turtles that he's trapped in Shredder's body by saying a poem. I thought that was nice, but they're basically meet up at the garage, the same area the mind swap happened, and they're able to switch back, of course. But that episode was definitely an interesting one. I always like Freaky Fridays type stories. I even rewatched the movie recently. But I definitely think of this episode when I think of the mind swap. But the next episode is Burns Blue. So this episode is more about Burn Thompson. It's during a hot day in New York. The Turtles are trying to have a good time with April at a pizza shop, but April ends up filming the Turtles fighting the bad guys. But of course, Burn Thompson, April's boss, just does not buy it. He basically wants to go out of his way to find the Turtles and basically say, like, he basically wants to expose them and just say they're frauds, they're menace to society. But he decides to bring Venom to go on this quest. But during this, the Turtles, of course, are having to go up against Shredder when they start to notice the weather's changing. And so April decides to investigate, but she gets captured by Bebop. And it turns out Shredder's trying to find some neutrino freeze that will cause, like, the city to freeze to death. And this is definitely a wild plot. But the Turtles end up having to go on, like, skateboards to track down the Shredder. But he ends up freezing Mikey and the rest of the Turtles. But during all of this, Burn and Venom end up trying to go into a dark alley to find the Turtles. And they bump into a gangster dude. And he tries to, like, see if he can get the password right, but Burn does not get it right, and the two end up getting kidnapped by the gangsters' goons. And this is where we get this infamous tickling scene where they're getting their feet tickled by these gangsters, but the gangsters flee the scene when they almost kill Burn and Venom, But this is where we get probably my favorite villain of this show, the first appearance of Don Turtelli. So Don Turtelli is the infamous dude who likes to tickle people with a feather. But for some reason in this version of the episode, he's a big fat man who has a gangster voice, and he's like, "Ooh, I got ways to make you talk." But he ends up tickling the two off screen, and this is where Byrne and Burnham end up getting dropped off by the gangsters, and they see the turtles frozen to death, and they try to encounter them, but they end up getting randomly captured by aliens. Just a random plot that comes out of nowhere. But the turtles end up getting unfrozen, and they skateboard their way to Shredder, and they go underground, and they almost get hit by a missile, but they are able to eventually save April, stop Shredder with his freeze blast plan, and they're able to cause like a giant earthquake that causes a bunch of snow to appear everywhere. But Byrne and Burnham end up getting captured by aliens that look like Elvis. I thought that was funny, but of course they get tickled by them. So yeah, it's a weird obsession the show has with tickling. I don't know if they just thought tickling was funny, or it's not as offensive, because you can't show actual torture in a kid's show, so I guess tickling is the answer. But I don't know. There's other two episodes I'll get to in my other two parts, but yeah, this is definitely a wild plot for sure. But Byrne and Burnham end up getting dropped off on Earth, and they think they've been gone for months. But Byrne decides to give the newscasting of what happened, and he just freaks out, and it's funny. But that's that episode. Definitely a random episode for sure, but definitely a lot of fun. Burns Blue. Next is the fifth turtle. So this is the first appearance of Zack. So Zack is known as the fifth turtle, who is a big fan of the Ninja Turtles, but after Donnie and Raph end up trying to pick up some food, they get attacked by gangsters, but it's interrupted by Zack, who shows up, who is spying on the turtles, and he introduces himself as a fan of them, but Donnie and Raph, for some reason, act harsh towards Zack. They just tell him to bug off, and Zack runs away, but he ends up accidentally taking Raph's turtle comm, and he wants to prove that he can be a Ninja Turtle too. But the whole plot of this episode is where Shredder and Krang are trying to lift the Technodrome out from the sky, underground, and into the Earth once the planets are going to align, because Donnie's also trying to figure out when the planets are going to be connected. This kind of plot was also shown in the TMNT animated movie. I thought that maybe that was a coincidence. But when they try to fight Shredder, Bebop, and Rocksteady, Zack ends up showing up, and he causes himself to get endangered, where the turtles are forced to rescue him. But this is where the turtles decide to recruit Zack. Well, not really, just have him be an ally, and they take him to the lair. He meets Splinter, and the turtles start to hang out a little bit. Zack starts to learn about what the turtles do outside of fighting crime. I thought that was a little nice. I like their bond with Zack. But Zack does give Raph his turtle comm back. But the turtles decide to go take down Shredder at the planetarium, I'm pretty sure. My bad. But Zack learns about this, and he decides to go investigate. But Shredder fears Zack is going to be involved, so he sends Bebop and Rocksteady to go after him. But Zack's able to blend in with his stuffed animals, which I thought was funny. But when Zack does show up to warn the turtles, he ends up getting captured. But the turtles end up showing up with, I'm pretty sure, Splinter. Wait, no, I don't think it was. But the turtles get captured, and Shredder's plan is almost gonna happen. But Zack is able to use the turtle. Earlier in the episode, he uses this wire thing that's able to make a loud sound if you plug it into the turtle comm. But because of this distraction, it's able to free the turtles of their bonds once Leo uses like a crystal that falls out. But the day is saved, and Zach is known as the fifth turtle. But Zach himself is kind of an annoying character to some people. I don't mind him. His voice is high-pitched. I can tell it's Rob Paulson doing like a high-pitched voice, which is funny. But this episode was definitely a fun one for sure. Next is Enter the Rat King. So the Rat King was in this version of the Ninja Turtles, definitely looks similar to his Mirage counterpart, but they had the kid-friendly him. So the Rat King is known for being obsessed with rats, and he ends up, after hearing a report from April, after hearing about a rat problem, because Byrne ends up getting in some traffic issues, he forces April to talk about rats, but this is where April gets kidnapped by the Rat King, and so the Turtles are forced to gather together to find April with Splinter. But once April actually reveals to the Rat King that the Turtles are going to rescue her, she ends up accidentally revealing who Splinter is, causing the Rat King to be interested in Splinter. But when they do encounter the Rat King, he ends up using like a flute that controls the rats. But the Turtles, of course, rescue April, and they're able to fight the Rat King and stop him from his evil plan where he's going to swarm a giant allegiance of rats all over the city. But this is definitely an interesting episode with the Rat King. I like the guy who voices him. I think it's Talmadge Coleman, the voice of Mikey. I thought he was really good as the Rat King. He just has that creepy voice and his obsession with rats. I always thought his voice was super iconic. And it's wilder that he's able to even control Splinter in this. This spot would be used in the 2012 show, so I'm thinking they got inspiration from this episode. So, or maybe it's a coincidence, who knows. But the Enter the Rat King was definitely a fun episode. But the next episode is Turtles on the Earth Core. So this is I'm going to quickly go over this episode. This is where the Turtles end up meeting a group of dinosaurs that were apparently sent and created by Shredder, and this is like I guess you can say a sort of Jurassic Park themed episode, even though Jurassic Park didn't come out until a few years after this episode came out. But this episode's alright. We hear a different Donatello, because I'm pretty sure Barry Gordon wasn't available for this episode for some reason, so Donnie sounds a little bit different. But I guess it's okay since they were able to make it work out. But this episode was definitely fine. It's cool to see the Turtles with dinosaurs. But Shredder wants to, of course, do bad things with an army of dinosaurs. But yeah, this episode's fine, like I said. The next episode is definitely an interesting one. This is called April Fools. So this is where April is invited to a party where she's going to interview a princess and her father at some palace. But she finds out it's a costume party, but she wears a yellow dress. And the Turtles are actually losing it over April, even though they don't date her at all in the show. They just think she looks super adorable. But I don't know. I never really seen the point of the whole Turtles x April. They even did this at the 2012 show. But that's a little different topic. But April ends up going to the party, but she's mistaken for being the princess. And the actual princess ends up running away because she hates constantly being controlled by her dad, and she just wants to have a life for herself. But when she realizes that people are worried for her, she decides to go back. But the Turtles end up going to the party after hearing about it, but they end up almost getting caught. But when they realize, the people at the place realize the princess has gone missing, they ask the Turtles to remove their mask. And this is where we actually see a scene where all the Turtles take their masks off. I thought that scene was definitely interesting. I always wondered what the Turtles look like without their masks. But this is just that random moment where they do take them off. But of course, the whole plot is revealed that Shredder is trying to kidnap this princess because he wants some necklace for some reason. That has I'm pretty sure it has like a specific power, but once Shredder does realize that he kidnapped April, he just puts the pieces together. And this is where we do get a great final final act of this episode where the princess does show up and she's able to help the turtles out, defeat Shredder, and they're able to get the necklace back. But that episode was definitely interesting. It was cool to see the costume party episode. I think we even saw like a Batman costume cameo. I thought that was cool, even though the animated series didn't come out at the time of this airing of this episode. But definitely fun episode. The last episode for now, for this part 1 of this part series for season 3 of this show is, I forget what it's called. It's Attack of the Big Mac. So it's kind of like the last season where they encountered some robot. This is where the turtles are attacked by some robot named Mac. And apparently this robot is from the future, I'm pretty sure, or from some other dimension. But the turtles end up trying to help this robot out when he realizes he's being used by Shredder. But he wants to use this robot, to take out the turtles. But the plot, he's a robot from 400 years ago. In the future, I'm pretty sure. So this robot could exist when we're all dead. Weird to say, I know. But it's definitely... I like the voice of the robot. He sounds just so futuristic. But there'd be a later episode in this season where we meet Metalhead, which is basically a turtle version, but a robot. But it kind of reminded me of this episode. But I don't remember too much what happens in this episode, other than the robot redeems himself against Shredder, and he's able to go back into his timeline. And it ends where he goes into the portal at the last second with the help of Donnie. But that's season 3 of this show. So sorry if I didn't go in too much in depth with each episode. But this is definitely a solid start to this show. Just wacky episodes with the Turtles against Shredder and Krang. But the Turtles have their wild catchphrases. And I even forgot to mention, I even like the Flintstones reference they make, where Mikey thinks he should change his catchphrase to yabba dabba, but Donnie stops him. I thought that scene was funny. But there's a lot of quirks that makes this show work. The voice cast is still really great. It's just wild that they had to come to this recording. And I honestly feel bad for the animators, because they were probably on a deadline when doing these episodes. That's probably why there's some animation errors. Like, for example, Raph looks like Leo for some reason in this shot. But I honestly think they did their best to make this show happen, to make the kids happy, because this show's a lot of nostalgia for me. And I bet it's a lot of nostalgia for you, because I didn't grow up with the 80s show. I grew up with the 2012 show. But I feel like this show is like blueprints for the current TMNT, because there's so much lore with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ever since the Mirage comics in this show. Without it, we wouldn't have Ninja Turtles today. So, definitely a great start to Season 3. I'm going to do Part 2 soon. So, anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time in Turtle Power.